My parents sent my husband a watch for his birthday. The second I saw it, my stomach dropped. "Don't touch it," I said. He froze mid-motion. "What? Why? Please. Just don't," I whispered. "It's a trap." I was certain. And I was right. We didn't argue about it. We dealt with it the next morning, calmly on paper. Letters went out to each of my parents. By afternoon, both were screaming. It had arrived on a Wednesday. Nothing suspicious, just a plain cardboard box with a shipping label and a cheerful little birthday sticker slapped on the corner. We had just finished a bland dinner. Something beige, probably frozen pizza. The kind of meal that leaves a faint greasy film on your teeth. He was rinsing dishes. I was wiping the counter when the doorbell rang. There it was, the box. He opened it with the mild interest you'd give a pair of socks. "Oh," he said, "your parents sent me something." "Did they? That's nice," I replied without looking up. "A watch," he added, pulling out a black velvet case. It was sleek. Too sleek. Before I even thought about it, my body reacted. Tiny churn in my stomach, like an old alarm clock running on a dying battery. I dried my hands slowly. He was already prying the lid open. "Don't touch it," I said sharply. He looked at me like I'd told him to put the watch in the freezer. "What are you talking about?" "It's a gift." I stepped forward, grabbed a tea towel from the oven handle, and wrapped the box in it. Even through the fabric, it felt too heavy. "Let's check something first," I said. "Check what?" "I'm not sure yet. Just something." He didn't laugh. That told me he felt it too, the wrongness. I placed it carefully on the table, took a clean, well-lit photo, not for memory, but for evidence. Then I searched. Manufacturer's logo, box design, serial number, retail listings, pricing. "Look at this," I said, turning my phone to him. $3,800. Silence. My family doesn't send anything worth nearly $4,000. Unless it's a bill or a desperate plea. My brother had only just moved out, barely managing a down payment on a tiny place. My parents weren't well off. Dinners were frozen veggies and whatever was on sale. I'd been covering their bills for years without question. So where did this watch come from? Maybe they love me so much they skipped paying for heat, so I could have a luxury watch, my husband said. I didn't laugh. Neither did he. I already had a hunch. And if I was right, it wasn't a gift, it was bait. My parents like to say they've always treated us equally. If equally means I did all the work and my brother coasted, then yes, equal. Growing up, I had chore lists, applications to fill, deadlines to meet. My brother? He had ideas about how the world was unfair to brilliant people who hadn't yet discovered their brilliance. He dropped out of university twice. Once because he forgot he was even enrolled. Meanwhile, I quietly paid my parents' phone bills. It never stopped. Then I met my husband. He wasn't wealthy or powerful, or tall, which my mother actually complained about. But he ran a small charity feeding the homeless, and I fell for him instantly. He'd started with nothing, no family money, no investors, just a borrowed church basement, some folding tables, and too much heart for one man. At first, I helped on weekends, peeling potatoes, handing out tea. Then I helped with the budget. Before long, I was there every free moment. We got married. The charity grew slow, steady, fueled by community donations and a handful of generous believers. We opened a second location, then a third. It wasn't glamorous. It was barely stable, but it worked. And my parents noticed. By then, they were heading into retirement, low pensions, minimal savings. My brother was still living at home, tinkering with half-formed business schemes and ignoring the trash. So we offered them part-time work with the charity, admin, event coordination, outreach. Easy, legitimate, and meaningful. It felt like a win. Until that watch showed up. 6 months ago, I thought we were all working toward the same goal. But things shifted. My brother moved out, not just into a rental, but into an apartment he purchased outright. He said he'd launched a tech startup. Something about intellectual property. He couldn't share the details because of NDAs, patents, and secretive partnerships. I tried asking questions at first, but he gave me vague answers, and eventually, I stopped trying. The truth was he'd never been especially savvy in tech or business, So either he'd made some miraculous leap in skill, or he was lying. Still, he kept insisting everything was going very well. Around the same time, my dad introduced a new food supplier for our charity. One afternoon, he came in carrying a folder and wearing the self-satisfied grin of someone expecting applause. He said he'd done thorough research, sampled the food, compared prices, and found a supplier who was cheaper, healthier, and locally owned. My husband reviewed the numbers, and they looked reasonable. We trusted my father's judgment and signed the contract. For the first 3 months, there were only small murmurs, people saying the food tasted different. But soon, the complaints worsened. People began getting sick, stomach cramps, vomiting. One man was hospitalized from dehydration after eating nothing else for 2 days. My husband, furious in a way I'd never seen before, launched a full investigation. He called shelters, reviewed invoices, demanded ingredient lists. What he uncovered made him physically ill. They'd been substituting cheap, low-grade meat for quality cuts, slipping in expired canned goods, and supplying unlabeled produce, all while charging us premium rates. My husband called a meeting with my parents and told them we were terminating the contract. They resisted immediately. My mother brushed it off as a misunderstanding. My father insisted the invoices were accurate and that people might have gotten sick from something else. He argued that ending the deal would damage business relationships and make us look bad. We're running a charity, not a restaurant, he said. Do you think Michelin stars matter here? But it wasn't just about protecting the supplier. His reaction felt too sharp, too defensive. It was as if they were protecting themselves. Just as my husband was preparing to send the termination notice, a parcel arrived. It was his birthday that week. We weren't planning anything big, just takeaway, a movie, maybe a walk if the weather held. He assumed the box was from my mother and smiled at the thought she'd remembered. Inside was a heavy, velvet-lined luxury watch case. He was about to open it, but something in me said no. The next morning, the air between us was heavy but calm. We went through the motions. He made coffee, I burned the toast and didn't bother making another batch. It felt strangely fitting, the charred edges and the silence. The watch sat on the counter, wrapped in the same tea towel I'd thrown over it the night before, untouched. I wrote 2 letters, sealed them in plain envelopes. He didn't ask what they said. He already knew. When he finally picked up the box, it was as though he could hear a ticking, real or imagined, and he handled it only with a dish towel, careful not to touch the leather, velvet, or even the box directly. Once it was rewrapped, we drove to the charity office in complete silence. We weren't angry, just steady, bracing for impact. Inside, my parents were at their desks pretending to work. My mom staring at the same email, my dad scrolling on his phone with a spreadsheet open in the background. We didn't bother with reception. We went straight to the staff room, away from clients and onlookers. My husband set the box on the table, and I placed the envelopes beside it. My father looked from the items to our faces. "What is this?" he asked. "Open it," I said. Inside were 2 letters. Polite, formal notices of immediate termination, with 1 month's pay included and no further involvement. My mother's face tightened in disbelief. "You're firing us?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Exactly like that." My father pushed his chair back so hard it scraped against the linoleum, the sound sharp in the room. "We're your family," he said. "Not anymore," I replied. He stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language, as if I'd forgotten the lines I was supposed to recite in some well-rehearsed family play. "We haven't done anything wrong," he said. "Yes, you have," I answered. Then I took out my phone, opened the browser, and pulled up the listing again. The watch. The price. I held it toward them. "Want to explain where this came from?" Neither of them spoke. "Why would you send that to him? You couldn't even afford to fix the boiler last winter." "I paid for that repair," I said. Still nothing. "So let me ask again. Where did you get the money for the watch?" My father shrugged. "It was a gift. An incredibly expensive gift," I said. "We thought he deserved something nice," my mother said suddenly. "Is it a crime to be generous now?" "No," I replied. "But it is suspicious." That's when they both started speaking over each other. Fast, defensive, flustered. "You have no idea how hard things have been. The supplier was legitimate. We were only trying to support your brother. That last part stopped me cold. What does he have to do with this? I asked. My dad shut down completely, and my mom looked away. Why were you pushing so hard for that company? I pressed. Why the urgency? Why lie about the food quality? People got sick. You knew that. They were exaggerating, my father muttered. One of them was hospitalized. He had no answer. You stood to gain from that contract, didn't you? I said. We didn't do anything illegal, my dad replied sharply. We just made a smart deal. You're the one making it ugly. I leaned closer. So that's where the watch came from. Neither corrected me. The heat rising in my chest wasn't fury. It was the slow, heavy confirmation I had been bracing for. You knew exactly what you were doing, I said quietly. And you gave it to him, knowing what it would look like, knowing what it could do to him if anyone found out. My mother folded her arms. It's not like we told him to accept it. But you knew what it was, I said. They didn't answer. You put him in danger. You put the charity in danger. And for what? Do you want to be poor your whole life? My father snapped. Do you want to keep struggling while companies like that catering business make real money? People got sick, I said. No one's dead, he muttered. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Then he said it. You care more about appearances than about your own family? I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I finally understood him completely. No, I said. I care about right and wrong. And what you did was wrong. All of it. My mom's eyes glistened like she might cry. I need space, I said firmly. No more calls. No more favors. I'm done. You don't mean that, my dad said. I met his eyes. I do. And I want you to leave. Now. They walked out, not slamming the door, but moving slowly, quietly, as if they knew something irreversible had shifted. I stood in the doorway watching them go. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just held on to the silence like it was something delicate. For the first time, I didn't feel like their daughter. I felt like the only adult in the room. The quiet didn't last. A pounding, hard, deliberate, rattled the front door. Not a knock. A demand. When I opened it, my brother stood there, flushed and breathless like he'd sprinted across half the city in the wrong shoes. What did you do? He barked. No hello? No good morning. I said. Is he here? He asked, trying to look past me. My husband stepped up beside me, calm, silent, but with a steady presence that made my brother hesitate for half a second. Why don't you tell us what this is about? My husband said evenly. You know exactly what this is about. My brother shot back. You're trying to ruin us. You're going to get us all killed. The way he said it, I knew this was only the beginning. What happened? I asked, keeping my voice steady. You canceled the contract, he shot back. You were supposed to keep quiet, let it go through. Now the deal's off, and people are asking for their money back. Who? I pressed. He hesitated, just for a second, but enough to tell me everything. What people? I repeated. He avoided names but admitted they'd paid up front, and now the agreement was dead. The money was gone, the product undelivered. And these weren't the kind of people who politely request refunds. So let me get this straight, I said. You took money from someone to force a deal through. And now that it's collapsing because we refused to sell expired meat, you're the victim? I didn't know the food was bad, he insisted quickly. Of course you didn't, I replied, because you never ask questions when money's involved. He crossed his arms. I'm going to have to sell my apartment. Maybe you shouldn't have bought it with money that wasn't yours, I shot back. I was helping the family, he snapped. No, my husband interjected, stepping forward. You were helping yourself. The room went still. My brother's voice lowered. If you bring the supplier back, this can still be fixed. We're not doing that, I said. You should think about what happens if you don't. Was that a threat? My husband asked. It's a fact, he muttered. We didn't slam the door on him, but it was close. 3 days later, the smear campaign began. Anonymous accounts popping up everywhere. Old Facebook groups, obscure local forums, even our charity's Google reviews. Did you know the manager drives a car worth more than your donations? Ask them about the Rolex. Think the homeless are being fed? They're feeding themselves. One blurry photo of the watch circulated online. Then came emails to donors, tagged posts, hashtags gaining traction. Within a week, 2 major sponsors froze their contributions, and one event was quietly canceled. Late one night, I met with my husband in the office. He looked worn down. The staff were shaken, and our volunteer coordinator was in tears in the kitchen. I stood in front of the bulletin board, staring at it like it might hold the answers. Then my phone rang. It was the State Department of Charitable Oversight, a branch I hadn't even known existed. They wanted to discuss leadership reviews, anonymous complaints, and allegations of mismanagement. Their politeness only made the dread worse. When I hung up, my husband didn't need to ask what it was about. The next day my parents called, or maybe it was my brother using their phone. I didn't pick up. Then came the email. If the supplier is reinstated and our positions restored, the attacks will stop. I read it 3 times, then laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. We should report it, my husband said. Tomorrow, I agreed. We barely slept that night. The next morning, we went to the police with everything: the supplier records, volunteer statements, emails, screenshots of the attacks, all of it. We explained the contract, the pressure, the thinly veiled threats, and the ultimatum. The officer taking our statement didn't look surprised. "You're not the first," she said. "It's happening more often these days. But you did the right thing." I wanted to believe that. I needed to. 6 months later, the story broke wide open. Front page of the local paper, a spread in a regional magazine, even a radio segment. It had everything: a charity scandal, bribery, betrayal, and the twist no one expected. A daughter who turned in her own family. My parents were sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and bribery, plus $50,000 in fines. Most of their savings evaporated, their reputation ruined. No more neighborly greetings at the post office. No warm community memories. The court confirmed that the watch was part of the bribe, along with $15,000 wired to my father just weeks before the contract's approval. Money that helped my brother secure his apartment. He got probation, 200 hours of community service at a food bank, and lost the apartment to seizure. The catering company was exposed as a front. Its CEO was sentenced to a year in prison, fined heavily, and had their license revoked. The company vanished from the internet, its name whispered only as a warning in nonprofit circles. We were cleared officially and publicly. The regulator released a statement. Donors returned. Volunteers came back. The board unanimously reaffirmed my husband's leadership. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee again. There was hope. I got back to doing the work that mattered. Honest work, the kind that fills stomachs and restores dignity. Before I reported them, I thought it would haunt me. Sleepless nights, my mother's voice accusing me of betraying blood. But I sleep better than I used to. Every meal served, every thank you spoken, every face that lights up with relief reminds me why I stood my ground. I haven't opened the letter they sent from prison, not out of anger, but because it's over. Some chapters close, and that's okay. This morning, the kitchen was lively. Music played from the radio, bread was fresh, someone spilled soup and laughed. A volunteer taught another how to chop onions without tears. It was noisy, imperfect, alive, and ours. So what do you think? Did it go too far, or not far enough?